The wind screamed first. Then the horses. Then the shot. Echoes split the canyon like bone cracking in frost. Smoke curled upward, tangled with dust. A rider slumped forward on his saddle, blood soaking through the back of his coat. He was still breathing, barely. His stallion, lathered and limping, charged through the crooked pass until it collapsed. Distant hooves pounded like war drums behind them, fading into silence. A girl stepped from the shadows. She couldn't have been more than 17. Hat too big, rifle too heavy, but eyes sharp like broken glass. She crouched beside the outlaw, watching his chest rise and fall. His face was caked in grit, lips blue, a bullet lodged in his side. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak. Just yanked open her satchel, pulled out thread, fire whiskey, and a rusted knife. This was the third dying man she'd stitched this year. But none had looked like him. None had her father's ring around their neck. She stitched him in silence, hands methodical, eyes never blinking. Each pull of thread felt like sewing shut an old wound that had never healed. Her breath came shallow. The outlaw didn't scream, just grunted through clenched teeth, his veins rising like rope. She poured whiskey on the gash. He flinched. She didn't apologize. The canyon around them watched like a graveyard, silent, dry, and unforgiving. "You're lucky it was me that found you," she muttered, voice gravel tough. He tried to speak. She pressed the blade to his throat. "Save your strength, or don't. I don't care." But her hands shook as she wiped blood from his face. He had her father's mouth, his same crooked jaw, and the same scar over his brow. Either this was fate playing cruel, or a lie walking on two legs. She didn't believe in either. But something deep in her gut twisted like barbed wire. Night fell hard. Coyotes howled in the far ridge. The fire crackled low. The outlaw drifted in and out of fevered dreams. She kept watch, rifle across her lap, boots planted firm. Every creak of wind made her fingers twitch. Trust was something she buried with her mother. But curiosity, the kind that itches even when it hurts, kept her staring at his face. He was younger than she thought. No more than 30. His clothes were expensive once. His boots, black Spanish leather stamped with the mark of Red Gulch. That was a long ride from here. Too long for coincidence. Her heart pounded in her ears. Maybe he wasn't just running from death. Maybe he was dragging it with him. At dawn, she found the map, tucked into the heel of his boot. Crude lines, landmarks scrawled in code, an X carved near a river bend. Her fingers traced it like braille. Something about it felt familiar. She remembered her father marking a similar shape on their barn wall before he vanished. She never told anyone. The sheriff said her father ran, but she'd found his blood trail. Now this stranger with her father's ring carried the same map. Her voice cracked. "Who the hell are you?" The outlaw groaned, opened one eye, and muttered, "Too late to ask that girl." She cocked the rifle. "Not if you want to leave here breathing." He told her 3 names. None were his. She knew a lie when it breathed. But something in his voice, calm, resigned, felt like truth wrapped in guilt. He said the ring belonged to a man who saved his life once. He never mentioned her father's name. Didn't need to. She already knew. She didn't lower the gun. "They're coming, aren't they?" she asked. He nodded, slow and grave. "And they won't stop." She stared at the ring again. Her past wasn't done with her. Neither was his. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. Not yet. Not until the blood trail came full circle. The morning sun didn't bring warmth, only clarity. Dust hung like fog. The outlaw couldn't ride, so she built a travois and strapped him in. The sound of dragging wood and labored breath echoed through the canyon as she hauled him up the slope toward her shack. It wasn't mercy. It was survival. Dead men attract coyotes. Live ones answer questions. Her boots crunched over gravel, rifle slung tight across her back. Every few steps, she looked over her shoulder. She wasn't sure she feared the riders chasing him, or what truth he carried. By the time they reached the ridge, she was bleeding from the palms, sweat soaking her collar. The outlaw coughed, murmured a name in his fever haze. Not hers. Not her father's. Someone else. Sarah, he whispered. Her stomach dropped. That was her mother's name. A name no one had spoken in years. She didn't say a word, just dragged harder. Her shack was barely standing, 4 walls held together by spit and stubbornness. She dragged him inside, dropped him on a cot that once belonged to her father, and bolted the door. The place smelled of old wood smoke and dried sage. A single window let in slivers of light. She checked the horizon, nothing but dust and bones. The outlaw stirred. "Where am I?" he rasped. She didn't answer. Instead, she threw a bucket of rainwater at his face. He gasped, blinking through the sting. "Start talking," she said. He coughed again, voice barely a whisper. "I came looking for a ghost." She tightened her grip on the rifle. "You found one." His eyes met hers. "You look just like her." She didn't ask who he meant. She already knew. She turned away before he could see the tears she refused to shed. She stood by the stove, boiling water, hands trembling. Every scrape of metal echoed. He watched her from the cot, face pale, eyes haunted. "I didn't kill him," he said suddenly. She didn't turn. "Didn't say you did." He winced. "But you think I did." Her voice came low. "Don't matter what I think. You brought his ring back. That's enough." He tried to sit up, winced, and fell back. "He saved my life. Years ago. I was just a thief then. I never knew he had a daughter." Her jaw clenched. He didn't talk much. Silence stretched between them, thick as storm air. Then he said it. "He died trying to find her." The pot hissed. The girl dropped the ladle. Her knees buckled. She caught herself on the counter. A scream welled in her chest, but never made it out. She was the orphan. But she'd never known her father had searched for her. Until now. They ate in silence. Dry biscuits, wild onions, and truth unswallowed. He coughed between bites. She chewed without tasting. "You said you were a thief," she finally asked. "Still are." He shook his head. "Not for years. And now?" He stared at the fire. "Now I'm hunted for something I didn't steal." "Not exactly." Her brow arched. "What does that mean?" He hesitated. It was a map, buried with a body no one was supposed to find. Her eyes narrowed. "Whose?" He said nothing. She slammed her tin plate on the table. "Was it my father's?" His silence answered for him. The room felt too small, like walls were closing in. She stood, heart pounding. "So you came for the map? And me?" His voice was barely audible. "I didn't know you were still alive." She whispered, "Neither did I." Night fell again. Harder this time. She couldn't sleep. Her eyes stayed fixed on the outlaw. He looked too peaceful. Like a man about to die, or a man who'd already made peace with it. She couldn't decide which one scared her more. Outside, wind howled like a beast circling prey. Inside, the fire cracked, shadows dancing across her father's old boots, still hanging by the door. She remembered him singing to her once. A lullaby with no words. Just hums and the tap of fingers on her back. She looked at the outlaw. Same fingers. Same rhythm. He stirred in his sleep, muttered that name again. Sarah. Her mother's ghost was rising. Her father's memory bleeding back through every lie. Her own past clawing its way out of the dirt. She stood and loaded the rifle. Some answers can't wait until morning. She rode at dawn. Left the outlaw sleeping, face toward the fire, rifle tucked beneath her arm like a secret. The desert stretched before her like a cracked parchment of old sins. She followed the path from the map. The same bend in the river. She found. the same outcrop of bones bleached white in the sun. She didn't stop. Not until she reached the hollow tree. Her father called it the place where the world forgets. She remembered now. A tiny handprint carved into the bark. Hers. A child's cry buried in memory. She dropped to her knees and began digging. Hours passed. Fingers blistered, dirt packed beneath her nails. Then she found it. A rusted tin box. Inside, a second map, Outlaw. This one older. And a photo. Her mother, smiling, arms around two men. One was her father. The other was the outlaw. Younger. Unscarred. And smiling. She rode back with the box strapped to her saddle, questions galloping faster than her horse. The outlaw was awake when she returned, barely, but enough to see the look in her eyes. She slammed the photo on the table. "Explain this," she growled. He stared at it for a long time. "That was before," he said. "Before the fire, before the shootout, before the lies." She pointed at her mother. "She knew you." He nodded. "She saved me once." The girl shook her head. "You didn't just find my father's body. You buried it." He said nothing. She stepped closer. "Why?" His voice cracked. "Because he asked me to." Her world rocked sideways. Her father's voice echoed in memory, one word she'd never understood. Forgive. Now it made sense. But forgiveness doesn't come easy when truth arrives wrapped in blood. The girl sat on the porch later, staring into the dusk. The air smelled like sage and storm. Behind her, the outlaw coughed in silence. Her fingers traced the photo again and again. 3 people. 1 family. 1 betrayal. She remembered her mother's lullabies. But now she remembered something else. Whispers in the night. Her mother crying. The name, Elias, spoken like a curse. That was the outlaw's real name. Not Jeb. Not Cole. Elias. She turned a photo over. A note scribbled in faded ink. "If she ever finds this, tell her I'm sorry." Her mother's handwriting. Her knees buckled. She pressed her face into her hands, tears falling soundless. The outlaw opened the door behind her, stepped outside slowly. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said. She didn't lift her head. "I see it now." Thunder rolled across the plains. Rain followed in waves. They sat inside, silent as ghosts. The shack groaned under the weight of storm and history. Finally, the outlaw spoke. "Your father knew your mother wasn't who she said she was." The girl's breath caught. "What does that mean?" He stared at the fire. "She was part of something. A crew. The map leads to more than land. It's tied to the Pinkerton ledger theft. Names. Codes. Kill orders." Her blood ran cold. "And you?" He nodded slowly. "I ran with them. But your father," he walked away. "He tried to save her. She vanished. He stayed behind. Until they came back." She whispered, "So he died because of her." He shook his head. "He died for her. For you." The fire popped. And the storm kept pounding. The storm passed before dawn. Everything felt washed and raw. She opened the shack door and stepped into the silence. No birds. No wind. Just aftermath. She held the map in one hand, the photo in the other. Behind her, the outlaw stood, leaning on the doorframe. "You don't have to run," he said. "You can stay. Let it go." She turned to him, voice barely a whisper. "It never let me go." Then, she handed him the ring. "This was never yours to carry." He closed his fingers around it. "It was the only thing that kept me human." She mounted her horse. "Then it's time to see who I become without it." He called after her. "Where are you going?" She didn't look back. "To finish what my father started." Then she vanished into the morning mist, the sound of hooves fading like a broken heartbeat. The trail led her through broken mesas and hollowed plains. Each step forward dug into the soil of her past. She rode alone, the wind stiff and cold, whispering names she hadn't spoken in years. She stopped at a watering hole near Dry Needle Creek, where the old church used to stand. Nothing left now but burned beams and bones buried shallow. She dismounted, knelt in the ash, and dug until her fingers hit iron. A nameplate. Sarah Lynn. Her mother's grave. No headstone, just a rusted locket wrapped in charred cloth. Inside, 2 photos, her and her father. On the back, one line etched in shaking script, "Forgive what I became." She closed her eyes. This wasn't just about vengeance anymore. It was inheritance. She slipped the locket into her pocket, stood slowly, and looked to the horizon. A new storm was gathering. This time, it had her name on it. She followed the trail east, toward the canyon towns where whispers traveled faster than bullets. Word spread before she arrived, about a girl with fire in her eyes, and a dead man's map in her saddlebag. Locals watched from behind shutters. One brave soul approached her near the general store, a wiry old man with smoke-stained fingers. "You look like her," he said. "Sarah, but younger, meaner." She didn't flinch. "I'm not her." He nodded. "That's what scares em." He handed her a note. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was familiar. Same curves, same ink. "He's alive, Red Ridge Canyon." But not for long. Her heart thumped. Elias, or the men who wanted him dead. Either way, the reckoning was close. She mounted up without a word. The dust hadn't settled behind her when the storekeeper whispered, "God help them boys." Red Ridge Canyon was a jagged scar on the earth, deep, narrow, and echoing with past sins. She tied her horse to a mesquite tree and walked the ridge with her rifle low and ready. Below, campfire smoke curled from a small hollow. She saw movement. 4 men. Armed. One sat by the fire, hands bound. Elias. Bruised. Bell. Alive. Dell. Rage flared behind her ribs. She didn't wait. Slid down the slope like a ghost, rifle raised. First shot took a guard clean through the neck. Second dropped another before he hit his saddle. Chaos exploded. Men shouted. Gunfire echoed. She moved like flame, fast, unpredictable. When it cleared, 3 men were down. The last one crawled, begging. She stared at him, then whispered, "You hunted my blood." One shot ended him. Then, silence. Elias stared up at her, blood dripping from his mouth. "I told you not to follow." She just said, "Too late." She cut Elias loose, handed him water but didn't speak. He winced as he drank, then said, "They wanted the map, thought I still had it." She stared at the fire. "They were after her. My mother." He nodded. She knew too much, tried to run. The flames cracked louder. "And my father?" she asked. Elias swallowed hard. He hid the ledger, buried the truth, paid for it. Her jaw tightened. "And you?" He looked at her, hollow. "I kept running." She stood, turned away. "I'm done running." He reached for her wrist. "Then, what now?" She didn't look back. "Now they come for me." Above them, the wind howled through the canyon like a warning. They weren't alone. Thorm was here. She gripped her rifle tighter. Time to finish what they started. They came at dusk. 5 riders, eyed, black dustas, rifles in hand, faces hidden by bandanas. She and Elias took cover behind rock outcroppings. He could barely lift a pistol. "I'll draw them," he said. "You flank." She shook her head. "You won't survive." He laughed, bitter. "Didn't plan to." She hesitated, then kissed his forehead like a memory. "You don't get to die yet." The first bullet screamed past. Then all hell followed. Gunfire lit the canyon like lightning. She moved between shadows, cutting them down one by one. Her breath came in gasps, boots slipping on blood-soaked stone. Elias screamed behind her. When it ended, 4 men were dead. The 5th ran. She chased him to the ridge, tackled him hard. His mask slipped. It was the sheriff from her town. The same one who told her years ago her father had run. "You lied," she hissed. He choked out, "We all did." She stared down at the sheriff, blood trickling from his lip, dust caked in every crease of his face. "Why?" she asked. He wheezed. "Your father, he found the ledger. Names, payments, my name." Her voice cracked. "So you killed him?" He coughed. "Nah. I didn't pull the trigger, but I aimed the men who did." She stepped back, gun trembling in her grip. "You were supposed to protect us." He looked at her, hollow. "That's what I was protecting." She raised the rifle. "Not anymore." A gunshot echoed, but not from her. Elias fired from behind, striking the sheriff clean through the chest. The body slumped. Silence followed. She turned, stunned. Elias stood there swaying. "You deserve the right to walk away clean," he said. She nodded slowly. "And now?" He looked at the blood pooling at their feet. "Now we burn the rest of it down." They found the ledger 2 miles north, buried in a hollowed rock beneath an abandoned mine. It was wrapped in oilcloth, still dry, pages brittle but intact. Names, dates, payments, corrupt officials, hired killings. Everything her father died to expose. She flipped through it slowly, recognizing faces from her town, men who smiled at her, tipped hats, handed her candy when she was small. Her jaw clenched. "This is poison." Elias nodded. "And power." She looked at him. "What would you do with it?" He shrugged. "Bury it deeper, or trade it for silence." She shook her head. "That's why they win." She struck a match, held it over the pages. Elias tensed. "You sure?" She dropped the flame. "My father didn't die so secrets could live." The fire caught fast. Ash swirled upward like ghosts set free. By morning, only ashes remained. They camped in silence, the fire dead, the air heavy. Elias coughed blood into a cloth, turned away. She knew he wouldn't last long. "You knew this was a death ride," she said. He nodded. "But it needed doing." She stared at the rising sun. "What do I do now?" He looked at her like a man already halfway gone. "Disappear. Let the legend carry you." Her brow furrowed. "I'm not a legend." He smiled, weak. "You killed 5 men, exposed the sheriff, burned the lies. That's enough to scare 100 more." She looked away. "I just wanted truth." He closed his eyes. "You found it. Now, survive it." She watched as he leaned back against a stone, breath growing shallow. "Go," he murmured, "while I still have the strength to watch you leave." She rode out before noon, dust trailing behind her like a ghost refusing to let go. Towns she passed didn't recognize her, or pretended not to. Her face had changed, harder now. No more orphan. No more girl. Just a rider with a story no one dared ask. At one outpost, she saw wanted posters, Elias's name, and hers scrawled beneath in red ink. Her bounty matched his. She chuckled. "Guess I made it." She tore the poster down, folded it into her coat. A child watched her from the porch of a saloon, eyes wide. She tossed the girl a coin and a wink. "Don't grow up too honest, kid." Then she was gone again, swallowed by the dust and sun. Behind her whispers began. Of a girl who rode alone. Of a ledger burned. Of justice bought in blood and fire. She stopped once more before vanishing for good. An old cabin in the hills, half swallowed by vines and time. Inside, her father's coat still hung by the door. She lit a candle, set the ring on the table, laid the burned photo beside it. Then she carved one line into the wood above the hearth. He didn't run. It was enough. No names. No dates. Just truth etched into silence. Then she walked out, closing the door slow, like sealing a grave. The wind picked up, scattering dust across her tracks. She didn't look back. By the time night fell, the cabin looked abandoned again. But if you looked close, closer than most dared, you'd find that message. A ghost's epitaph. And maybe, just maybe, a legend's beginning. Weeks passed. Her name faded from papers, but not from whispers. Somewhere beyond the plains, past borderlines not drawn on maps, she rode through dusk into a mining town called Cross Hollow. Small. Forgotten. Just the way she needed. She traded her horse for a mule, her rifle for tools, and took work under a false name. But no matter how deep she buried herself, trouble sniffed the scent of blood. One evening, as she repaired a shutter outside the boarding house, 2 riders stepped from the saloon, speaking her real name. Not loud, but just enough. Her back stiffened. The wind paused. They turned toward her. "We've been looking for you, Miss Lynn," one said. She stood, slow. "You found me." The hammer dropped from her hand. Inside her coat, a new pistol waited. They didn't see her fingers twitch. They followed her into the alley, one slow, one fast, both armed. She let them get close. Then, the mule brayed behind them, breaking their focus. That was all she needed. She turned fast, pistol out, the world narrowing to a breath and a trigger. First man dropped hard, shot through the chest, eyes wide like the truth hit before the bullet. Second pulled his gun, but she was faster. Shot rang. His weapon clattered across the dirt. He fell back, gasping, blood pumping from a thigh wound. "Who sent you?" she demanded, stepping closer. He grunted, laughed. "You think fire burns out that easy?" Her brow furrowed. "You're not Pinkerton." "No," he spat. "We're what comes after." His hand moved again. She didn't hesitate. Another shot. His laughter stopped. The alley was quiet again, except for the mule, chewing hay like nothing happened. That night, she packed what little she had. No more hiding. Cross Hollow wasn't safe. Not for her. Not for anyone kind enough to keep her secret. She slipped into the livery, saddled the mule, then paused. The barkeep, an old woman named May, stood by the stable doors, arms folded. "They'll keep coming," May said. "You didn't do nothing wrong, but they'll still hang you." The girl nodded. "They want the legend more than justice." May handed her a parcel. Food. And letters. From folks who still believe in ghosts. She smiled faintly. "That what I am now?" May's eyes were sharp. "No, girl. Ghosts ain't brave enough to walk through fire. But you are." The girl mounted the mule, tipping her hat. "If they ask, I was never here." May chuckled. "Child, they already forgot what truth smells like." The night swallowed her whole. She rode hard, through desert cuts and riverbeds gone dry, toward the place the map once pointed, an old fort turned ruin. They said it was empty. She knew better. Inside those walls were the last threads of the ledger's bloodline, those who profited from death and erased the names after. She reached it by dawn. Stones crumbling, gates half buried in sand. But smoke rose from one tower. Someone was inside. She tied the mule, crept in, boots quiet as whispers. Inside the chapel ruins, 3 men sat around a table, counting gold in silence. One looked up. Froze. She stepped into the light. "You remember me?" she asked. They reached for guns. She was faster. 2 fell before the third blinked. He lunged, tackled her into the pews. Her back hit stone. Gun skittered away. They grappled, dust, blood, teeth gritted. She found a rock. One swing. Then, silence. She walked out of the fort alone, limping, arm wrapped in cloth torn from her own shirt. Smoke curled behind her. Gold left burning in the chapel fire. Some things weren't meant to be inherited. She didn't look back. She never did. Out on the ridge she paused to breathe. For the first time in years, the air didn't smell like betrayal. Just sagebrush and sunrise. She pulled the photo from her coat. The edges were worn, but the faces still smiled. Her fingers traced her father's jawline, her mother's eyes. "It's done," she whispered. But peace doesn't echo. She knew the name they'd remember wouldn't be hers. It would be the myth, the orphan, the fire ghost, the outlaw girl who vanished like smoke over the hills. She smiled once, then tucked the photo away and disappeared into the wind. The wind whispered through the half-ruined town of Crowsfall, where new signs masked old sins. The gallows had been torn down, replaced by a crooked church bell that never rang. Locals spoke softer now, eyes darting to shadows that no longer moved. But one morning, a rider came in from the canyon trail. Dust clung to his boots, and an old ledger rode in his saddlebag. In the saloon, he laid it on the bar, cracked leather, pages yellowed and brittle. The barkeep wiped his hands, flipped it open out of boredom, and froze. A charcoal sketch stared back at him. The eyes in the drawing were haunted, hollow, unforgettable. Beneath it, in steady cursive, a name had been etched, and then crossed out. Beneath that another name. Alyssa. The barkeep whispered, "She was real." But no one answered. The stranger was already gone, riding east. There were tales whispered up in the mountain towns, where the pines grew dense and fog clung like secrets. Some said a woman lived alone in a shack built of railroad ties and sorrow. They said she never aged. That she painted by lantern light, always the same face, his face, over and over. Children dared each other to follow the path past the frozen creek, to knock once and run. None stayed long. One girl, braver than most, slipped a daisy under the door and ran. She heard humming inside. Later she swore the song wasn't meant for this world. A tune from the past, heavy with blood and dust. Locals began leaving offerings, blank canvas, coal pencils, oilcloth. No one ever saw her, but the paintings would appear in town squares at dawn, nailed to the walls. Faces of forgotten men. No. Outlaws. Martyrs. No. Ghosts. In the border town of Lamento, a weathered deputy cleaned out the evidence room for the first time in decades. He found a satchel, dried blood at the corner, a torn red ribbon inside. Beneath it, a letter never mailed, addressed in a trembling hand. He unfolded it with gloved fingers. "He was more than what you called him. And I was more than what you let me be." The signature was a single letter. A. That night, the deputy drank alone by the fire, hands shaking. He remembered the girl from years back, silent, eyes too old for her face. She'd vanished the same day. The outlaw was reported dead. But no grave had ever been found. Just blood in the dust. And a legend that grew every time someone tried to bury it. They say justice comes on horseback. But sometimes it walks alone. A pale dawn crept over the Badlands when a preacher found tracks no animal made, barefoot, one limping, one steady. They led to the ridge above Dead Man's Gulch. There, etched into a stone slab with a shard of obsidian, was a name, Cassian Ward. No body, no cross. Just a canteen, a blood-stained scarf, and a rusted revolver, half buried. Wind howled as the preacher knelt, hat pressed to chest. He whispered a prayer, not for the dead, but for the living who couldn't let go. As he turned to leave, he caught sight of something else carved faintly beneath the name. A single line. "He died free." The preacher rode down slow, eyes wet. He didn't speak a word of what he saw. Some truths weren't meant for sermons. The towns changed. Faces didn't. One day, a new artist's stream lit up the dark web. Same username Alyssa once used. Same background. Same digital brushstrokes. But the voice. Mail.org. Calm and wand. Calculated. He narrated legends of the West with uncanny detail. His first story. The orphan who saved a wounded outlaw and paid the price. The ending was different. She lived, he died, and the town was burned to ash. Viewers thought it was fiction. Until someone traced the metadata. The stream came from a ghost town. Crow's Fall. The account vanished 2 days later. Only one message remained in the feed. She was the first. You're next. Then silence. No more uploads. No more sightings. Just an echo. A girl with a bleeding heart who once saved a stranger and became a legend no bullet could kill.